your budget by automating recurring documents instead of creating them manually. My name is Fabian. I'm Senior Technical Evangelist at Docs42.
Hi,
and
I'm back here too. I'm Johannes. I'm also glad you joined the session. We're very much looking forward to a lot of cool content about financial services.
Perfect. So if you put the next slide, here there are also our contact details, but we have this slide later on as well. And before we start with the session, I have one more thing to admit. We love the Power community. And usually we went there to the on-site events, and we had always great fun. Also, that you can see Russ as Darth Vader somewhere. And if you have a little closer look to the images, there is always a guy or a lady carrying a Lego in his or her hands. So in this case as well, also, even if you are online, and today have a Lego to win for you, it will be the Star Wars A-Wing, and you can just scan the barcode and pay attention to our session because you need to answer some of the questions, and then you can participate in our quiz. And yeah, in Docs42 we have a rule that means you're only allowed to talk and to speak holding the Lego. So, Johannes, what is the content for today?
Yay! Okay, so I think we just proved we really sit next to each other. Well, that's the Lego again. Okay, perfect. So what's the plan for today? First, of course, we want to cover the whole issues of document automation and what the challenges are, what the essence of it is, and at the end of the day, if it's done right, how can it make life a lot easier, like Fabian already said. We will give you a quick introduction to Docs42. The best part of today is that we will do a live demo. Of course, always live demo is very important, but you choose which directions we go. Because later on there will also be, like we did with the form for the Lego, there will be a form where you can answer what technologies you want to have the focus on. And based on that, we'd like to put the focus there. Because yeah, obviously there is such a great stack of the Dynamics, the Office 365 modules, especially with the usage of financial services. So we want to, whoever is in the call, show you what you're interested in most. And there is, of course, the Q&A. The Q&A basically starts right now. So whenever there are any questions, just feel free to put them in the chat. That's one of the big benefits of having us two sit in the session, so we can, one, have checked if there's any questions and ideally answer them right away if they fit to, for example, the live demo we're currently in. Cool. All right. So what's the thing about document automation and what are the challenges? The thing that we would like to ask you first before going into it is if you already know about Docs42, or generally also if document automation is a thing that covers some of your interests. So feel free to scan the barcode, and we will in a short second then show this to you in the browser. So you will even get to see the answers, and it's always very good for us to know, because if we know that you already know a lot, then we can also be quicker in the beginning and focus more on live demos. If there is a lot of knowledge that's still going to build up, then we of course have this. Okay, let's just quickly switch to forms. And looking for the responses there, there's some coming in. Let me just share this QR code again. Any more responses coming in. So there's the majority not knowing Docs42 yet. One more questions coming in. Okay, well then that's very good for us to know. Thanks for the feedback so far.
That was just the warm up. The next barcode will be then will be the decision which demos we are doing. So
yeah, absolutely. Go and join as much as possible, because that's like really we are going to do the live demos only based on that information. So what's the challenge of document automation? If you consider like document automation or generally generating documents or creating documents in your own environment, usually there is a lot of different data sources on the one hand, with of course the great options of the Power Platform, and also in the Power community. We have so many different events on finance operations. We have on CE. We have them on basically across the technologies. And Of course, in a document, you want to generate all of them into one document, merge them, maybe have CRM as the sales and marketing tool, but also connect them to ERP data. And at the end of the day, also, those documents should, of course, not only be like the ones that you kind of would be able to text in your notepad. You want to have visually appealing documents that have logic, that ideally also where you have only very few templates, because the logic in the documents can already handle conditions, can handle PowerPoints, can even handle your email outputs. And that's the focus of Docs42. So integrating a lot of different data sources while providing a lot of different output options in the whole Microsoft ecosystem, well, and beyond. How's business dealing with documents nowadays? If you just consider your own cases, so usually when it comes to document automation, well, what we all have been doing a lot of times in our life is copy pasting, take the old document, just replace the values. Also, for example, if a system wouldn't help you to automatically get them, or if you consider, for example, if you work in an organization where your sales does the quotes, and well, of course, also in financial reports, for example, then if they don't have a benefit of getting the documents right away and having the right data in the system, most likely they will generate one time a nice looking Word document, for example, and from that moment on, copy paste. That's something we could get rid of when you have a good data set that will get the right document for you, and then later on you will have the right data as well. It's a side benefit, but it's very beneficial for the whole system. Of course, then there's the VBA macro expert, which automates perfectly for simple case, not server side. So if you want to use it within Power Automate, or if you want to use it one time in F&O, the next one in CE, of course, it's something that usually is only on the Office application and might be limited to one of the applications. So you want to be open to many different applications. And of course, those of you working with FinOps, so there is, of course, a great way starting with the electronic documents, but still, like at the moment, it's still very technical. And of course, there's the traditional way of programming with SSRS, where if you do the SSRS as a business user, you've probably tried, not sure if you're possible or if you're able to do business documents on your own with SSRS. So getting away from the programmatic approach and towards what we all call the citizen developer, so that a business user is able to design those documents easily. Docs42 is the option to basically harmonize those. So you'd have server-side automation with a service. Like in the session before, we have been talking about SOAP and REST service quite frequently. That also applies to Docs42. So Docs42 is a web service with REST and SOAP interface that you can call from CE, from F&O, from Power Automate, from SharePoint. And with that flexibility, you gain the great option that it's not built on that very application only, but it's a web service multiply integratable into whatever application you use. And even if you have your own developed system, you can use it and call that web service Docs42 web service from there. With the biggest benefit, of course, of that web service using still a Microsoft Office document for the design, not for the server-side generation, of course. That's very important. But you can design those documents easily in Word, and then at the end of the day have a cool process where business users can maintain information in that document. The service is automated automatically, of course. And those of you familiar with the customers below this, there is, of course, the focus of financial services today, but generally this is something that is used across all industries, as a business process always requires a document. Yeah, if we consider finance, well, of course, there's a lot of documents that ideally for us are in a digital process. So it's very important for us that we handle documents through a digital process. And that's something that we will also see later on in the output option. So of course, this is something where, for example, from CE, you trigger an email automation that will be an email activity where you can, from the sales perspective, also check everything that is within D365 CE. And at the same time, it might be archived into your SharePoint or in your Azure Blob storage. So kind of like being in that whole also legally important ecosystem of Microsoft. And once you start with one of those projects, there is the potential for many more documents that you can automate. And that's also usually the story with many of our customers, that you kick it off with one project and you then have an option set for a lot of different integrations. The same applies, of course, to manufacturing. We just wanted to bring some reference cases in there and also some ideas, as you see on the left-hand side, with other offers, orders, invoices, audit reports, of course, sales presentations. There's also something we will see in the live demo that based on, for example, a risk analysis of the customer, you present them the perfect information as part of an emailing. So all of those logic that can be applied based on the data into the documents, that's very important for us. Okay, in terms of having the design in Office, that's what you get basically. You have those blue fields that can come from any of the data sources we will see in a second, and they will, as I said, be server-side automated. So you call the service, you get the PDF, you get one PDF, or you get thousands of PDF if you want to do them in bulk, or you want to do them as a single document. And they can become very complex, like the logic in it, but very individual in terms of having the right document for the right customer at the right time, and the business users not needing to worry about any of this. That's the data sources you can integrate. I said that, of course, there's the Microsoft ecosystem to be integrated as of Dynamics, as of SharePoint, as of Teams, but there's also something beyond. So if you have something like an SAP or any custom data sources like SQL, for example, same, feel free to integrate them and all at the same time into one document, and of course also combine those. So combine, for example, a CE product sheet that would be saved in your SharePoint into that very document. That's also something we will see later on in the live demo. Talking about the live demos, like we said, so we want to put the focus on what you are interested in the most. So please, again, put out your phones or click the link that we have in the chat to let us know what technologies you prefer to see today for the live demos, because based on this, we will choose where we can put the focus. And let's do the same thing again and switch to the browser to check. And there's the QR code. All right, then. C is an answer. Okay.
A lot of C.
Someone really loves C. Okay. I might have a delay in this, but in any case, then CE for the focus for the starting it will be. That's perfect. And let's continue with this. All right. We are. So we mentioned that there is a lot of integrations in terms of the data going into a document, but there's also the flexibility in terms of the output. That's all the channels we can basically focus in terms of the output. And as you see there, there's of course those where you download a document, but also very importantly, outputting them into SharePoint, into Teams, into DocuSign, having basically the whole digital process of a document with your requirements. Speaking of requirements, it's often very, very useful, as we've seen multiple times in the last, well, today and also in the other events, that within Power Automate processes, you have basically a document generation that is not triggered by a manual action, but more within a process, like an approval workflow. And that's also something we can do. So you would trigger those documents to be automated, for example, based on a flow. Feel free to do so. We can integrate those. There's also a couple of more sessions that we did on the integration with Power Automate. Feel free to check out our homepage and you will see them there in more detail. But enough of that. Let's kick off the live demos. See this for the beginning, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Johannes, I just opened the form one more time again because you guys were joining. I see it here. We have a lot of Power Automate of of interest as well. Then Teams, there's Dynamics CE, SharePoint also. So I would say that we quickly start with a quote within CE. Then we have covered CE. Also, do we see any digital signing here? Yes, I do. So I will show you one scenario, a contract scenario from CE with digital signing. And then after that, it makes sense that Johannes maybe shows you a little bit the integration of SharePoint, also maybe of Power Apps, if we also have time for the contract, could be possible, sure. And yeah, then we will see how far we went. So I guess we have a good demo schedule for today. Perfect. Then let me jump into our CE scenario. This is the following. We have a sales quote in this example. And in this example, our customer or our company is called Solar Power Deluxe. They are basically providing solar panels and everything you need, and also the services to install these panels on the roof of the customers. Basically, these quotes are usually a little bit more complicated or more complex than just listing the 3 products here. So what we have in this scenario is we have a SharePoint library, and there is a folder with the same number as the quote ID from Dynamics. And within this library, we have a lot of documents and also Excel files and also even PowerPoint presentations. So let me open this. Start with the PowerPoint presentation. It's a 1-slider, just a connection plan, has to be included to the quote. Then we have an Excel file. Here, there is calculations. How much does it cost to install the panels on the roof? So basically, let's change this to 40 hours, for example, just to make it a little bit dynamically. Then we have some advertisement. That's an entire Word document stored here in SharePoint. And also we have a cover letter, for example, also a Word document. And all this information, the text block and the data from the Excel file, has to be included into the final quote. Usually what happens is salesmen or sales guys are copy-pasting all the information into the quote. But using Docs42 means you are here completely integrated with a solution with our output actions. And if I'm clicking here, I can select some of our output actions that we have seen. And what I would like to do as a starting point is just to return the quote. It's just, this quote will be generated right now. All the information from the SharePoint will be included. And then I get a return file to have a look how it looks like as PDF. And the basis of this document is a template, a Word template, which is stored in SharePoint online as well. And later on, we will change something, of course, in the template as well. So here it is. That's more or less a preview action. I can have a look at the document, and it opens here in my reader. And this is how the document looks like. So we have information coming from CE. This is all the information here, as well as the customer address and, of course, quote number and so on. And here, this is the Word document. That's the cover letter, which we have seen in SharePoint. It's included. Then the products. Products are coming directly from CRM. Basically, it's exactly these products here, the 3. And then I go further down. We see here, this is the calculation file. That's the Excel file. And if you remember, I changed the hours to 40 hours. So it takes always the data directly in the moment when I'm clicking on the button and the generation process was started. And then let me go further down a bit. So this is the PowerPoint presentation included, and also, of course, the entire Word document, the little promotion thing, also Word document stored in SharePoint. So basically, clicking on the button, immediately the document was returned. And now what I would like to show you is how does the template look like? So how does the template design working? And I would change something, and then I show you other output actions as well. So let's jump directly to SharePoint. We have a Dynamics 365 site. You see it here. We have our finance operations templates, also the for sales templates. You see it here also, even Business Central templates. So we store it all here. But of course, you can decide where you store it in your SharePoint environment, wherever you want. So this is my template library, and we have a lot of templates included. Basically, the sales quote template, which is this, which I open right now. And that's a normal Word, as promised. Now it's downloading the template, and the data map also will be downloaded for the document. So I have to quickly open authenticate myself. So now I can start. That's a normal Word. And in our add-in here, in Word, we have our add-in included. That's in the ribbon. And with the data map designer, this is where you connect to your data sources. So this has to be done in the first place, because you need to connect your different data sources. In this case, we are connecting to CE data, of course, for all the information from the quote and the products. And then you see SharePoint modules. That's the SharePoint text, the library that we included to integrate the SharePoint modules. And if you have a closer look to all the data sources, so you see a lot of them here. We have all the information. Look at this, the SharePoint data. Here's the CE data source, the finance operation data source. So you see, you can really combine as much data sources you want without programming. And we have our own filtering, and also you can use a visualizer. And that's the reason why we have different colors here for different data sources, so you can really decide which color for the data source do you need. And then after you connect it to your data, you click here on the button and you can drag and drop your data fields, whatever data field you need. So let's go for organization, for example, the name of the organization, you can drag and drop them into the document. And that's basically like building Legos. That's why we always have a Lego price, because you just step by step enter something into the document. And here you can use the data fields, and you can work with the data fields as you're used to do it in Word. So if you would like to have a different color on the name of the customer, then you just click here as you used to do it, let's say orange or something, and then the data field is included as orange. And what you always can do is you can generate a document locally just to see what happens. So I will do this, clicking here on the button, and generate the document locally. So I'm selecting the solar panels. There are all my quotes listed. I will take the same one that we had. And now we are expecting that here the sales quote, the header here is now in orange, of course. So here it is. Also, I added, let me put it side by side quickly so that then you can see better what happened. Basically, I added this data field, the name data field here. You see it here. So this is what Adventure CO, that's the customer's name. So it is also listed here one more time again. Then I changed the quote, the color from here one more time in orange. So now it is integrated as orange. And then you see it here, we have one data field, it's a blue data field, and that's my Word document from the SharePoint library, my modules, and we just decided, define it as Word document, and then the entire Word document will be included. And the same thing here, basically for the products, we have just one line of products, and then we have a repetition, it repeats, so the tables can also be dynamically, and it's including all the products from your system dynamically into the table here. Even images. The images also are stored in Dynamics, for example. But you could also integrate images from other systems, of course, because you can filter and combine the different data sources. And here, this is the table for the Excel files, for the SharePoint Excel calculation. So it's included here as a table. And then if I go further down, there is the PowerPoint presentation here, and also the little Word document. So this is basically how it works. And what I would like to do now is I would like to delete this one little data field that I added, because it doesn't look very nice. So this one will be deleted one more time. And also because it was in this green color, let me highlight this one and make it black, because this looks a little bit better. And then we will regenerate the document and see what happens. So let me do it like this. Now I still have the template open. And if I go back to my system, I can say one more time again, save to SharePoint. That's another output action. That's the SharePoint action, or save to Teams, because some of you guys said you would like to see Teams as well. Of course, that can be opened then from Teams. So let me show it. So we click here on save to SharePoint. Now the document will be regenerated. It will be the orange headline, and the entire document, the entire quote will be stored in a SharePoint library directly that we've predefined before. And also this library could be opened from Teams, for example. So let me open here my SharePoint. We defined this library, the sales quote library. And you see, as we are using our Docs42 cloud service, this user, Fabian Huber, that's me, also is impersonated here. We just wrote the quote ID within this column here, and you see that's the quote. Let me open it quickly with orange header. So open the browser, and you see it here black. We made this one black, and here we have now the orange quote. And this document, of course, could be opened from Teams directly as well. So this is, it doesn't matter, it's no problem. Good. Then one more thing, because we had a lot of Power Automate stuff, if I could remember correctly. So what we also did here is we said, if we change something within this entity, then a flow will be triggered and the flow will regenerate the entire document and then also save it to SharePoint. So I will change the discount because I'm very generous. Let's say 25 and click here on save. And now in the background, the flow will be triggered, and we have a Power Automate Premium connector. So it's pretty easy then to configure your flows in your Docs4U 2 online service with Power Automate. And this, the flow triggers our connector, triggers our server, and the server regenerates the quote and puts it directly again to the SharePoint library. The same one that we have seen before, but we just changed the name differently. So let me quickly show you what I mean. So we changed the name to, I assume, quote. It's here in our Dynamics site, and there's the sales quotes library, and here it is. It is basically yeah, there are two flows. So we have a flow with Dataverse that automatically the quote will be sent via email, but here that's the flow that I triggered that I meant. So we have it, we called the name differently. If I open this document now, you will see that there will be the discount with 25% directly here. So completely automatically, you don't even have to push the button. Good. So we have seen the quote scenario, we have seen the SharePoint action, return action. We changed something in the Word template for this quote. We have seen that we can integrate entire documents or data stored in SharePoint or any other system. And now what I would like to show you is the contract scenario, because a lot of customers love to use Docs4U 2 also for contracting. That's the reason why we added a contract scenario here to our contacts. That's maybe not the best entity, but you can have your own contracts entity, of course. But we made it for that it's a little bit easier here directly in the contacts. So we added here a button also to generate the contract. I have one sample employee, Michaela Mitarbeiter, and this email address is also synced with my email account, so I can show you what happened here. What we did here as well is we have a Word template to SharePoint Online, and she is a developer, Michaela Mitarbeiter, so you have different job titles, developer, sales manager, whatever, and based on what I'm selecting here, different policies and different documents will be included. So let me quickly refresh this one here, and then we will generate the quote, the contract, the employee contract for Michaela Mitarbeiter. Here it is. So I have two output actions, just the contract as a return action, and the second thing, contract via DocuSign, because we also would like to see digital signing. So we have a technology partnership with DocuSign, so we added this output here. But first, let me just generate the contract and get it, as we have seen it with the code, just returned to have a preview if everything is correct. And then the next step would be to send it via DocuSign. So I open this one here. You see it Adventure CO as well, in this case, the company, then that's the information, Michaela Mitarbeiter coming from CE. And if I go further down, we have some agreements. You see the salary, all this information is coming from CE. And then let me go further down. There is a policy at the end. That's the policy for the developer. And this policy is stored in SharePoint. So you, again, can really combine different documents based on the position. So if you're a sales manager, you have different policies at the end. And that's, yeah, it's just controlled by our filtering system directly in the data map, pretty easy to configure. But this scenario we also have in SharePoint Online. So Johannes will show you how the contract looks like in more detail. But before Johannes will show you the SharePoint contract, I will show you the DocuSign action, because we are happy with the contract. Everything is fine. Salary is exactly as we had, 9,000, perfect. So Michaela needs the contract to sign. Then you go here and say contract via DocuSign. And what Docs2 does now is it generates the contract. It sends it directly to DocuSign, and DocuSign automatically sends it to Michaela. And we have the email address here configured and the name, of course. And then it looks like this. Michaela has her calendar here, her inbox here, and she is waiting for the contract. So here it is. This one is sent directly by me, Fabian Huber, who sends the contract. And there it is. So it looks like this. For those of you who are working with DocuSign, this is the standard form here. And then Michaela would click here on the button, review the contract. She's pretty happy to be a new employee for Adventures CO, and she's also very happy about her salary of 9,000 euros. You will check it quickly. Aha, here it is, perfectly. And then she clicks on the button, signs the contract, and then she says finish, and that's it. The contract is signed. Also, of course, you will get a copy then into your inbox of the final contract. So that looks like this. It's immediately here. You see it. There is the final contract. It's the same. The contract that Docs2 generated, and DocuSign was just putting the signature here on the signatures employee. So yeah, that was the second scenario. So we have seen the code scenario in CE. We have seen it with Power Automate. Now we have seen a very standard contract, employee contract generating triggered from CE and sent via DocuSign, digital signing, all completely included. And now we would like to see a bit more the integration into SharePoint. And as we are here in the contracting, maybe Johannes, you can show us how it looks like here in SharePoint with the contract.
Absolutely. Thanks, Fabian. Before jumping into that, Tim, regarding your question, so the question was whether you can have specific libraries that are matching the dynamic data in terms of, for example, on the one hand, if you have an Opti that will have both the data from a specific team, but also, at least that's what I also want to get to, is that you output that document into that, for example, site that would be to that Opti, or to the team that would have a library to that Opti. Both is possible, and what I just briefly want to show you in terms of this. Let me just start by sharing my screen again. So everything Fabian has shown already, and Tim, if there's any questions that I will not cover in the next couple of seconds, feel free to reach out again. So as we've seen here, of course, in the solar panels, based, for example, on the flow, any kind of change that I'd trigger in Dynamics in here would also then trigger, of course, the flow to automatically generate the document. All the code modules that are linked to that very document are currently saved in different folders that match the solar, or in our case, the solar panel. And even, of course, in here, me as the one having access to that very teams, I can again open the advertisement and change anything in here, which then, of course, would be in the quote we generate from that moment on again. And eventually, of course, there's also the output library there that we have also seen by Fabian already, that there is both the flow and the one where we triggered it with the push of a button. So both are then integrated in Teams. I hope that answers the question. If not, feel free to reach out again. And yeah, as Fabian said, we want to trigger something from SharePoint now. And as we've seen the contract within CE, we want to do the same thing now within SharePoint. And just to kind of also show you that both the output of the contract was triggered first time now from CE, but it will be the same thing now from SharePoint, where Fabian I'd like to hire you for another time. Email. Number. You can choose your position.
Sales manager, please.
Sales manager. Special agreement.
E-bike.
E-bike. E-bike. Yeah. You are humble. You can have everything you want. Free vacation, cars.
I need a quick e-bike.
Get quick. And of course, we're going to do some formatting on this as well, so, because it's a very important information. Have this in the contract there, and as salary and save. Again, similar to what we've seen in Dynamics CE already. So in the moment of saving that very information, we are triggering that this new information we get, in this case in the SharePoint library, will automatically be added to the very contract we had. It will be, in this case, also sent out to Fabian. So in case that's an HR scenario you have in financial services internally, this would then also, of course, like me, the one being in HR, I would not need to worry about anything of it, but I'd have the email of the contract sent out right away. I'd have the whole contract saved to SharePoint right away. And of course, I can also demo it if I want to see it here. So similar to the CE integration, we also have the SharePoint integration. Open as PDF. Let's just start with the simplest one. Click on OK. We'll do the same thing as we've seen before directly in Dynamics SharePoint. I'm sorry, directly in SharePoint. Just to check that I misclicked. In any case, what I'd like to demo to you again is the DocuSign contract. So you see that the very same scenario we before had within Dynamics CE, we now will have within SharePoint to trigger this document automation. And of course, then also once this is sent out, check before we check the email in the All Contracts library. Let's have a view. Perfect. About a minute ago, we also have already generated the very contract for Fabian in SharePoint with the flow. And again, as you've already seen in CE, this looks very similar, only with the difference now that the data is not coming from CE, but this time coming from SharePoint. Okay, then let's just quickly check in Michaela's inbox, because we want to see, as Michaela is also in CC for the contract, this has also been sent out, which is great. So there was the automatic send out of the very contract in here, as you see. And then lastly, of course, also the DocuSign contract. Let me just move it over from my second screen, where again, very similar principle to what we can do the completed contract, can review it, can sign it, can do everything we want, and basically generate the very document. Okay. So much for that integration in terms of the SharePoint. Let's have a look into the template again. The Docs42 templates library. It's just the template again, in this case from SharePoint. Of course, I could open the same way I did, but in this case from Teams. Because it's basically just the means of where I start in SharePoint or where I start in Teams of opening the document. And any adjustment I again do to this very contact will of course be in the live document that I also have included in SharePoint. But insert data field will, if I click on any of those, also show me again where this is coming from, which SharePoint library, what information I have provided in this. And in this case, for example, similar to what we've seen before, we include a barcode. And at any time of this, we can, of course, also, again, like we've seen before, generate the document with the live data that we already have in that very document. So let's just use Fabian again, generate the document. And we are good to go with that contract. And as you've seen before, both of course work the same way. So we have the information that is provided in here with the title that gets included with all the information a little down below. And also in here we have a condition where the salary, if it's above 2,000, gets a paragraph included. If not, it will of course also go to the very top. So also the numbering of this will then be automatically incorrect. That's perfect. And if we scroll down a little more, there will also be our HTML included, where we get a quick e-bike. So all of our information provided, perfectly aligned with the data structure. And of course, in the process, for me as the one being in the HR department, I don't need to worry about this at any time. Cool. Let's, as a next case, we had somebody also for finance and operations, right?
Yes, I guess so.
Let's just also have a look into FinOps here.
Mm-hmm.
And generate a document. Also from FinOps, with a very similar approach, of course, again, we have all the integration there. You basically define the parameters, and once these parameters are filled in, you again have a PDF that gets there as an output with all the information, with the numbers, and that in this case get repeated for the different modules or the header information in Dynamics FinOps. And there's, of course, as always, an advertisement that is a Word document that gets integrated. And we have a switch from portrait to landscape also in the FinOps module, which, if you're familiar with SSRS, can be very challenging. Let's see. Okay, just a quick recap. Did we miss out on any of the technologies that should be in the live demo?
No, I don't think so. The only thing that we have is the investment proposal, maybe for all the financial service interested people. So that would be another scenario. Just that's the PowerPoint scenario. So we just have seen a lot of Word, a lot of systems. So CE, FinOps, SharePoint. We've seen the Power Automate integration. The only thing that we didn't show is Power Apps. But let me quickly show the PowerPoint presentation, and then you can show Power Apps, the contracting. The same contract that we added for me could be generated directly from Power Apps as well. So that's what Johannes is showing them. Okay, then I quickly share my screen one more time, and I have one scenario for you. I even got the entire products here, so the entire DocuSign contracts that Johannes was generating so far. So what I have here for you is an investment proposal. So if you're working for finance and you have customers they are interested in some investment products, for example, then you would really quickly generate some proposals for them. And in this case, it's a PowerPoint. So here again, I'm just within the add-in. That's the add-in is for the Office. The desktop version is just to design your templates, but you can also generate documents locally. And we have, you see it here, some blue data feeds for images. We have some text. You see the tags for the customers. Then we have different risk profiles, for example, and some proposal for different shares and so on. So there's a lot of possibilities. We even have some charts. And what you would like to do is you would like to generate this one. So if you click here on generate, you have a list of your customer in your system, for example, in CE or in SharePoint, wherever you're working with. And we have some sample customers here, like 3 of them. For example, let's take Robert Huber. And then I would like to generate a proposal in PowerPoint for Robert. Clicking on next, I select the customer willingness. In this case, you would have the risk willingness. So in this case, you would have it in your system, of course. But here I can select it manually. So let's say Robert is a risk taker, number C. I click here on next. Then the employee. In this case, this is you actually, but we have some sample employees. Let's say John Hinder, for example. That's the guy who is filling it, and your contact person. And then I click here on generate. And now I get a PowerPoint presentation generated for Robert. You see it here, Robert Huber. That's me, John Hinder, for example. That's your contact person from this bank. And now if you go further down, of course, all the tags are now included with Robert. And here we have the risk profile, as we said, it's number C, he's a risk taker. And then if I go further down, you get some of the portfolio of Robert here. That's a 3 shares here in Austria somehow, and the current rates of that will be included, of course. So it's completely up to you what you would like to show. Even you can integrate Excel graphs and diagrams, dynamic graphs and diagrams into the document as image. And there we have the actual performance of the portfolio from Robert. So you see different profit and losses here, and so on. And then even there is a diversification proposal. So different, he's a risk taker C, so he gets different options here shown. And also there are some diagrams and graphs, even the probability, the risk, the estimated risk and profit for Robert. So it's completely up to you how you design your template. The data is in your system, in your databases, or in your CE or dynamic systems. And this data can be drawn also into PowerPoints, and you can draw also your images and diagrams, graphs, and calculations into the final document. And that makes it very easy, especially in the finance industry. If you would like to generate proposals and send it directly to the customer, that's a very easy way then, even with PowerPoint. And that's actually a lot of customers are now just requesting us because of PowerPoint, because PowerPoint is more or less can also be automated, of course. Good, then we have some minutes left. That's a good transition to our last scenario. And I hand over the word, or basically the share, to you, Johannes.
I'll just Power Automate quickly. Right, just click the sharing. All right. Yeah. So as you see here, there's multiple processes that we have that trigger document generation at some point. And there is a premium connector, Docs42, that is available. And with this, as we've seen multiple times today, there is a simple, very simple flow in this case, but it does the trick in terms of document automation. So when an item is created or modified in whatever SharePoint library, for example, like this was the modern employee contracts we had before, this triggers the document automation as part of Docs42. And then there is, in this case, a web service integration where you have all the variables defined. All of this, of course, is documented. And based also on the question we had before, is the output flexible in terms of the library? Yes, of course. So any variable that you have, that can be, for example, in here as the library, can be used this way. And there's also a more convenient way to configure this in a kind of a forms approach. But that's the way to go if you want to automate your documents. Also within a business process, we have the standards, of course, in Flow, but there's also integrations into the ISVs, such as Firestart, such as Nintex, such as K2. If that's your choice of a workflow tool, feel free to reach out to us because we can integrate into those as well. Good. 10 minutes for Q&A. Just go back to the chat. Tim, I hope, as we said before, that what we've shown answers your question, at least partially, with the integration of Dynamics in Teams that also can also generate the documents into SharePoint. And if there are any other questions at the moment, feel free to reach out to us in the chat.
Thank you very much, Johannes and Fabian. So are there any other questions in relation to their demonstration, where they covered quite lots of use cases there with many of the line of business applications that you have in the Microsoft ecosystem as well as outside? Are there any questions? I think there were some questions around collaboration on documents. I think there was. I think, Johannes, you've already answered that one.
Or at least I tried.
Yeah.
Especially the documents and the text blocks, or even the Excel file, which we have seen. SharePoint is a great collaboration tool, so everyone can work within this document. And then after that, a document, or in this specific text part from the quote, for example, and then it will be included after you did the generation process. So it's a very good way to collaborate, even in Teams, as Johannes already has shown. So.
So you've actually done a very elaborate demonstration of how to actually create the document, right? To actually construct the document from all the different elaborate data sources, which is often the difficult part, the very, very hard challenge for most organizations to consume basically a single source of all their data into one place, right? So you've solved that problem with this solution. I guess the next challenge is around, you know, the collaboration of the document and obviously the actual sending and receiving of the document. So would you like to share some information and some strategies that you often share with your financial service clients around that?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that, like, especially in financial services, there's multiple challenges to this. So one thing that we see also within invoicing, for example, in terms of the legal aspect, is that, at least for the DACH region, that Azure Blob Storage is a very important output channel for us, because at the moment it's the one that's legally binding. That's one very important aspect. And then, of course, having the combination also in terms of the output, because I think, like, the moment it leaves your system, it's kind of the way to show, or to your clients, to your customers, to also to distribution, that the information is in that very document, but at the same time it's still within your system. And to go those like choose, for example, in this case, the two output options. That's just a very important task also to our customers, to have the flexibility to, based on the project, have the flexibility in the output, and Russ, like you said, also in the input. And the document basically being a part of a digital process that in the moment of generating does not leave the sphere of the process you are thinking it in, if that makes sense.
And also we have a lot of financial reports. We have customers, they have financial reports with hundreds of pages long, you know, and they have maybe the data structure is SQL, and you can really work with Word, with designing. You can add sections, you can add the conditions around sections, so parts are included or parts are left blank. And this is pretty nice to, yeah, pretty good. You just work with Word, connect to your system, connect to the data, and get all this data included. And this is what our customers in financial services really appreciate.
Thank you so much. Okay, great. So I think there's a final opportunity for people to win that prize, isn't there, guys?
Johannes, would you share the PowerPoint presentation one more time, because there's one more slide with the barcode, and for those who were concentrated during the session will definitely have no problem to answer all the questions. Here it is.
There you go. So there's your final chance to win that awesome Star Wars Lego set.
Fly somewhere.
And so one of the common themes on the previous session, as well as this session, was on the Dataverse. So the Dataverse Summit is a 3-day boot camp that's taking place next month. It's the big event of the year. So don't forget to check that out. That's probably one of the key deep dive topics that we'll be covering to help you build your solutions, which obviously Docs42 integrates with as a data source, as well as all the other data sources. So one thing that may confuse some of the people on this call today is the fact that the Business Central data source, the finance and operations data source, and the CE data source are very different data sources, even though they're called Dynamics 365. And that's why we need solutions such as Docs42 to be able to interface with the different databases, because as you can imagine, the metadata and schema is very different for all three of those databases. And so we are doing a deep dive on the Dataverse, because that's you'd say the weapon of choice when it comes for building apps, low-code apps, really. So don't forget to check that out. That's happening next month. You'll also see Docs42 there also. And I will share the link for Dataverse Summit in the chat window, so you can get involved in that. So anyway, we're almost at the end of the hour. So Fabian, Johannes, do you have any final comments or announcements to make?
Yeah, one last thing, and for those of you who speaking German, there will be a session in the German Powerthon, and that's also in the beginning of November, and that's the right-hand side. That's actually a customer case. There will be one customer from us showing the entire process in CE with DocuSign, how they do it with Docs42. It's on the 3rd of November. And yeah, but this will be in German, unfortunately. So that's the last thing that I would like to show out.
Thank you once again.
Thanks a lot for having us, Russ.
Yes.
It's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much, guys. That was Johannes and Fabian. So thank you once again, Johannes and Fabian, for that very, very comprehensive session and tour of the ecosystem, the Microsoft ecosystem. So thank you once again.
Thank you too. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Bye.
Fantastic. Okay, we're almost time for our next session already. So the next session is a very, very, very important session. It's on